Ladies and gentlemen, now today, courtesy of the legendary Dataminer Otriux, we are going to be having a bit of a look and breaking down the early datamined abilities for the introduction of Squidward into Marvel Contest of Champions. And Ebony Maw, man, is looking very interesting. He looks very unique in terms of his character design and has a few really cool mechanics, man. However, Ebony Maw, if you are a Corvus player, is going to be your absolute worst nightmare. He has a mechanic that basically, and this is probably one of the most interesting mechanics about this character, if the opponent doesn't have class advantage, Ebony Maw causes all guaranteed critical hits to miss. So I think he might be like 100% Corvus immune, man. Like Corvus, while he's got his glaive charges, you know, you're not going to be able to hit Ebony Maw, so it's just an absolute Corvus glaive player's worst nightmare there, ladies and gentlemen. So it might be quite a good ambush champion. But aside from that, he's got a lot of degeneration. There's so much degeneration all over the place, and if you do mess up and if you're not aware of his abilities, it looks very easy to get degenerated and then get absolutely ruined. But I think this champion as well is going to give quite a bit of value to Hulk Ragnarok and maybe Human Torch as well, because he has kind of a miss mechanic. So we'll go through you know, all of the base stuff, man, because there's a fair bit to cover here. So the first thing he has is a focus mechanic. So if Ebony Maw isn't focused, he begins focusing on the opponent's mind for a certain amount of seconds, understanding their mental state, and this time is doubled if he's under the effect of one or more non-damaging debuffs. So it's got kind of this period of a few seconds while he's focusing on the opponent's mental state, and then he becomes focused, and once focused, the opponent gains 1 persuasion every set amount of seconds there. I imagine that's going to go up fairly quickly. And also, when struck by the opponent's heavy attack or special 3 attack, Ebony Maw's focus is broken. So this will mean that, you know, he's got those few seconds where you're not getting any of these stacks of persuasion at all. So heavy attacks and special 3s are going to be key against Ebony Maw. And for every 20 persuasion on the opponent, you get inflicted with a falter passive lasting for 3 seconds. However, if you are playing a Cosmic Champion, this actually increases to 5 seconds, and enemies inflicted with Falter have a 100% chance to miss, and if Ebony Maw is awakened, when you attack into him and you miss, then you start to degenerate. So you need to make sure when you have the Falter passive, you don't attack into him, or ideally just keep on using heavy attacks, special 3, to keep constantly like break his focus, so you don't get the, the persuasion stacks and the Falter in the first place there. So yeah, that seems fairly easy to play around, but on certain nodes, especially with like stun immunity, if you can't like heavy counter him, that might become a little bit more of a problem there. So not too sure about that one, lads, but we're definitely gonna have to see. I think there's definitely you know, at the base of that, some potential for Ebony Maw to be a very annoying defender there. So yeah, persuasion is the percentage of the opponent's mind persuaded by Ebony Maw, and also when the fight begins, the opponent is inflicted with deterioration passives equal to Ebony Maw's persistent charges, which we'll talk about as well. Those are linked to his missions that he has. And also when the fight starts, Ebony Maw inflicts the opponent with 1 weakness debuff per persistent charge, and there's some cool stuff you can do with the weakness debuffs with the special 2 as well. And also at 100 persuasions, this is mainly when you're playing Ebony Maw here, you get a debuff on the opponent called Black Tongue, and it reduces power gain from all sources by a certain percentage. It's not affected by ability accuracy reduction, and it lasts for the rest of the fight. So once you got 100 persuasion, it's go. So while Black Tongue is active, the opponent is inflicted with 1 deterioration passive every certain amount of seconds. These passives last indefinitely until consumed, each reducing the potency of the opponent's fury effects by a flat percentage, stacking up to a maximum of certain amount of times. This champion has been persuaded by Ebony Maw and now suffers from permanent power gain reduction as well. So yeah, the main things are kind of the deterioration and the permanent power gain reduction when the opponent has Black Tongue, so 100 persuasion charges, and he has 3 missions to complete, and each mission can only be completed once per fight, but completing all 3 of the missions in a single fight, grants Ebony Maw 1 persistent charge up to a maximum of 6 that he can have in total. So he's got kind of the persistent charge mechanic that many champions do, you know, Corvus Glaive as well. But this one's a little bit interesting, man. I feel like it's really going to ramp up his damage and allow him to get into some nasty stuff quite quickly, the more persistent charges you have. So yeah, each time you complete a mission as well, you're going to inflict the opponent with a Degeneration passive, dealing a certain amount of damage over a certain amount of seconds. So those missions are pretty straightforward, man, and I don't know if they can be completed in any order or if it's just random there. So you've got mission 1, which is nullify a buff from the opponent. Mission 2, cause the opponent to lose power. You can do that via the heavy attack. And mission 3 is cause the opponent to falter and miss. So you can do that, you know, I assume fairly tactfully by just, I would assume in most matchups, getting the falter buff and then baiting out like a heavy attack or a medium or a special attack as well, and just completely missing that there. So yeah, I imagine these missions are going to be quite straightforward to complete there. So that seems like a pretty cool mechanic to allow him to you know, ramp up throughout the quest. And then, as we talked about earlier, if the opponent doesn't have a class advantage, any guaranteed critical hits, so like Ghost Special 2 or Corvus Glaive's attacks, these are going to miss Ebony Maw, so something you need to be very, very careful of. And also, no contact. Ebony Maw's first light attack is the only basic hit to make contact with the opponent. So yeah, if you use like double medium combos, then you never make contact with the opponent. I guess that's a way to play around certain matchups, maybe like Korg's Rock Shield as well. This is going to be really, really valuable for, maybe he's going to be a really good counter to Korg, actually, thinking about this as well. So yeah, that might work out pretty damn well. Then also heavy attack power steal, so landing a heavy attack steals all the opponent's power gain buffs and a certain percentage of their current power. Seems like a dope heavy attack, man, especially against Hyperion, dude. That's going to be so much fun to fire off against Hyperion. So yeah, that's really, really awesome there. And then we've got his special attacks. We've got Unseen Blades from the Special 1. So Ebony Maw forms sharp blades from objects in his vicinity, slashing the opponent with multiple strikes. So when activated and with each hit, Ebony nullifies 1 Fury, Cruelty, or Precision buff from his opponent, and this expands to all buffs if the opponent is inflicted with Black Tongue. So yeah, that's just going to be an absolute stripper on the Special 1, man. A pretty good time. But in terms of the Nullify, he's not quite the crazy level of like Symbiote Supreme when it comes to Nullify by the look of it, but still that's a pretty effective Nullify once you've got Black Tongue on the opponent. And also, if no buffs are nullified during this attack, the opponent gains a Fury buff, increasing their attack rating by a certain amount for a certain amount of seconds. So this gives you a way in matchups where you don't have any buffs on the opponent to not only complete your Nullify buff mission, but also to strip that buff and gain even more power there. So that seems pretty good, man, pretty good. And also the opponent is inflicted with 1 weakness debuff for every buff nullified, each lowering their attack rating by 5% for 2 seconds there. And then for the Special 2, inflicts the opponent with a Degeneration passive, dealing a certain amount of damage over a certain amount of seconds. And then also, if the opponent has 6 or more weakness debuffs, they are removed and replaced with a Degeneration passive, dealing a certain amount of damage over a certain amount of seconds. So yeah, I assume you can get the weakness from either the Special 1 or the persistent charge mechanic there. So that seems pretty dope. And then finally got the Special 3, which seems really interesting, man. I think this is where maybe some of the big Ebony Maw damage potential is going to be at. So if the opponent is not suffering from a Degeneration, Ebony Maw will inflict 1 on them. However, if the opponent is suffering from a Degeneration effect inflicted by Ebony Maw, its potency is doubled for the rest of the fight, and this increase can stack up to a certain amount of times. So you can just double your Degenerations, especially in buffs, you know, because Ebony Maw is of the Mystic class, so you've got a big buff in terms of Mystic Dispersion there as well. There's potentially some crazy stuff that you could do in certain buff matchups to get rid of all these weakness debuffs on the opponent, and then use, you know, get the Mega Degeneration there, and then use the Special 3 to double it. So yeah, I don't know, man, there's a lot of potential there. And also the final effect of the The special 3 is Ebony Maw reaches into his opponent's mind, depleting all their current power, gaining a certain percentage of the power depleted for himself over the next certain amount of seconds. So you've also got a power drain on that, man, which is a pretty nice time. So yeah, also on top of that, we have the awakened ability of Ebony Maw, which is Deteriorating Mind, and when the opponent misses an attack, they are inflicted with a Degeneration passive, dealing a certain amount of damage over a certain amount of seconds. So yeah, when you're playing this champion, you can tactfully like miss to degen them as well and play that fairly cleverly, but also it's important to, you know, not trigger this, I assume, when fighting Ebony Maw, so be careful with champions with guaranteed crits there. Also, each time Ebony Maw nullifies a buff or activates a special attack, he places 1 Deterioration passive on his opponent, and when Ebony Maw inflicts his opponent with a Degeneration, all Deterioration passives are consumed, each adding additional damage to his Degeneration. So I think the Awakened ability is going to add a fair bit to his damage output, but yeah, seems pretty interesting, man. There's definitely a lot going for Ebony Maw, because Degeneration, you know, there's pretty much really only like Hulk Ragnarok that's kind of immune to it, so it's just a very, very effective like damage over time effect to have, and if it's really, really strong, it's just going to be great for so many matchups and make Ebony Maw incredibly versatile there. So yeah, I think he's got a really, really good base kit, man. I really like the look of Ebony Maw. He seems awesome, but I'm interested to see those values as well. And then we've got the synergies with Ebony Maw as well. So we got Lieutenants of the Black Order, and this is all members of Thanos' army. When the fight starts, gain a precision passive, increasing critical rating by a certain percentage for 20 seconds. Again, Corvus, he's got guaranteed crits for the first 20 charges, so this is not very useful at all for Corvus Glaive. Completely useless, in fact, to the best of my knowledge there. But Proxima Midnight and Cull Obsidian, and I assume it applies to him as well, might be pretty good for there, so, you know, that's alright, man. I think Cull Obsidian and Ebony Maw are probably going to benefit from this one the most. Then we also have Cull of the Maw, and this one's with Cull Obsidian. So Ebony Maw, charging a heavy attack for 0.5 seconds, grants the opponent an indefinite fury buff, increasing their attack rating by 0%. So I imagine this maybe has like some good synergy, especially with the special one, because you can just like constantly like strip that fury buff and harness it for like more power gain while like stacking up weakness, which then you can use the special 2 to convert to Degeneration. So yeah, there might be some interesting stuff you can do there. And also Cull Obsidian. We'll talk about that one when it comes to the Cull Obsidian video. We'll go back, man, because we need to cover his abilities first. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, what do you think of Ebony Maw? Let me know in the comments section below. Out of Ebony Maw and Ronan, I'm really, really excited to see Ebony Maw in the game, man. He seems really interesting, really different. I really like Ronan's abilities as well. I think he's going to be a very, very fun champion to play. But so far, like, both of the new characters look incredibly interesting. So yeah, out of Ebony Maw and Ronan, which one do you like the look of the most so far? Let me know in the comments section below. But anyway, ladies and gentlemen, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you did enjoy it, feel free to smash that like button. That'd be greatly appreciated. Aside from that, take care, and I hope that you have an absolutely fantastic day.